Years ago, he adopted Committee. Ready? I still wait for Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to probably one of the penultimate meetings at Essex County Council in this year. Nice to see you all here. Can I welcome you to the Police Services and Economic Growth Policy and Scrutiny Committee. Here we are on Friday the 19th of December. And at the meeting at the moment, in the room are members of the committee and other substitutes that we have been advised of. And also officers are present, including Katie Bray, Head of Legal Services. We're once again here in the committee room number 1, which is our hybrid meeting room. There are a few points to bear in mind if you don't mind some house notes. The speakers and cameras will track you and pick you up as you start to speak. Please continue to speak clearly and try not to whisper. Please keep other sounds to a minimum if you can. Please bear in mind the ceiling microphones are extremely sensitive and may pick up conversations in the rooms, including informal remarks amongst members and officers. The last point is particularly important as we are live streaming this meeting on YouTube and a recording of the meeting will be available afterwards. We're not expecting a fire drill this morning, so if the alarm does sound, please follow the officers out of the building and gather in the cathedral grounds. We have a busy agenda today and we really need to finish this meeting by 1 p.m. So I'd ask presenters to keep their presentations and answers succinct. Presentations have already been circulated in advance, so sometimes there's no need to go through each of them slide by slide. And committee members can play their part in the situation as well by making sure that their questions are succinct and on stream, especially as a lot of the paperwork has already been circulated. So can I just ask in the room, is there anybody that should have paperwork that hasn't had it? Good, thank you. We move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is members, apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. So we're asked to note apologies and substitutions. Declarations of interest can be made by members in accordance with the members' code of conduct. And so that means you can make a declaration now, or you can make a declaration as time goes on. So can I hand over to Justin for apologies for any remote and for any remote joiners?
Thank you, Chairman. So we've had apologies from Councillor McCory, with Councillor Loxton subbing today. Apologies from Councillor Skeels, Councillor Honeywood, and we have Councillor Dobson joining remotely.
Thank you. Minutes. We're on to item number 2, which is minutes from the last meeting. We now need to approve them as a correct and true record of the minutes of the meeting held at the 20th of November 25. There have been some items raised by Councillor Gadd and they've been raised direct to Justin. So Councillor Gadd, would you like to...
Thank you. Yeah, I've sent the precise wording to Justin, but there were 2 things on the minute 4 where we talked about corporate performance, which weren't mentioned. So one was this point that we've got the Everyone's Essex sort of 20 principles, but I can't remember having seen the list of all the KPIs behind that. So we talked about at the meeting was that someone would deliver to the committees the full list of KPIs, annotated, say, well, this committee is doing this, this committee is responsible for these, this one's these. Because certainly there are some items such as sustainable transport which weren't referred back to, which weren't presented to you last month with any KPIs. So whether maybe they don't exist, but we talked at the meeting about them coming back with an annotated list. So What I wanted to include in the minute, which we discussed, was members noted they had no certainty as to whether all of the performance indicators had been correctly reported onto a scrutiny committee, and that it appeared that some of the 20 Everyone's Essex commitments were not being reported on. Members requested that officers circulate a full list of all of the performance indicators, annotated to show which was the responsibility of which committee. So it correctly reflects what we discussed last meeting.
It did or didn't reflect?
What I've just read out, I think, did reflect, so I would like that added into the minutes, if people are happy with that.
I think, Justin, answer to you.
Yes, I'm happy to make that amendment if members are happy.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable with that, members?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Thanks. So we'll make that adjustment. Thank you.
And then there was a second one which I'd like to add into the minutes, where saying that members noted that, so in relation to the targets on highways, there was a target that defects shouldn't exceed 4 or 5% of the network. Historically, defects had never exceeded 2%. So I raised the issue at the last meeting that the performance target seemed utterly ludicrous because it was so easy, it was inevitably going to be hit unless there was an absolute disaster. So what I would like added to the minutes, which to record what I raised last time, was members noted that the targets in relation to highways seemed inappropriate and almost impossible to miss. Brackets targets of 4 and 5% defect, and the historic average is around 2%, and asked for further information on the target setting, which we're still waiting for. So those are the 2 items I'd like to change in the minutes, please.
Justin?
Again, if members are happy to make that amendment.
All agreed?
Yeah, but there's a recording of this, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
Can you just did not check the recording?
No, I've checked the recording, so
So Paul says that it's fine.
it's essentially minutes need to accurately record what was discussed at the meeting. Sometimes minutes, depending on who writes them, sometimes they're detailed, sometimes they're succinct. I think what Councillor Gadd is doing is adding a bit of detail
Yeah, no,
to the...
if they're there, that's fine.
But I'm comfortable that they do reflect what was discussed at the meeting.
There's a delicate balance between recording just decisions, which is some people think is a proper thing to do, and often members who would like every single word recorded. So there's a balance to be drawn. If Justin's happy to amend it, and Councillor Gadd's happy to accept it, we can take these as a true and accurate record. Is that
I was
fair?
just picking up on these 2 because they both contain action points which wouldn't otherwise be reflected in the minutes, so that's the reason.
Okay. Are you happy to take these as true and accurate record?
Yes.
Thank you. Move on to item number 4. Item number 4, we now welcome to the meeting Councillor Mark Platt. Mark, good morning, who is the Deputy Cabinet Member for Highways, Infrastructure and Sustainable Transport. With Councillor Platt today is Tracy Vickers. Morning, Tracy, who's Head of Sustainable Transport, and Alistair Southgate, who is Transport East. Welcome to you.
Sorry, we skipped over item 3.
We did, didn't we?
We did.
Okay, don't try and be too much of a hurry. So let's forget what I just said. Let's go back to item number 3, which is all those questions from the public. Do we have any questions from the
There were
public?
no questions from the
We'll move on to item 4, which I'm halfway through. Just go back to page 11 of the agenda item. So the item considers the proposed new transport strategy, a better connected Essex, and the results of the recent public consultation. The strategy is due to go to Cabinet for full council in early 2028. So the action required is the committee is asked to consider the presentation and the results of the public consultation.
Is it 28?
26.
26, I think.
I put that in just to see if you're all aware. 26. The committee is asked to consider the presentation and the results of the public consultation and question officers as they are here today. And I think this is good because this is about what we've been striving for much of the term. It's a thing called pre-decision scrutiny, which we like, which is where we get to scrutinise something before it goes to something like Cabinet. So pre-decision as opposed to post-scrutiny. So I welcome Councillor Platt, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And you've almost given the introduction for the piece, but I'll pick up and just emphasise it's for early adoption in 2026, 2028. Since our last strategy in 2011, we'll all be aware of the needs and challenges around travel and how they've changed. And this document really, had a lot of work going behind it to try to ensure better access for all. Support the growth and delivery that the residents need and want across the county. And it will set out Essex's transport vision and guide transport elements across our strategies for a better alignment. I'm sure we all understand the better alignment you can see across the county. Just getting here today. So the new strategy will strengthen collaboration with partners, provide an up-to-date local transport plan, which then provides a clear transport framework for district local plans, which is an important part of this, and we mustn't forget how key that is for all those different districts that are involved here. And the new strategy should support a smooth transition to the combined authority, which will be responsible for the plan and a greater strategy for That's pretty much my introduction. I'm now going to hand over to Tracy to fill in all the gaps. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Councillor Platt, and thank you, everybody, for inviting us back. A wee point of clarification. Alistair is here as much in the guise of his previous role as Transport Strategy Lead for ECC, and has been responsible with me for writing this for the last 3 years. So it was important to me, and it's important for this committee, that Alistair is here and able to present. He also wrote the previous article. So next slide, please, Lisa. Thank you. So I'll just give a brief summary of the key takeaways, a refresher of why we need this strategy, why it's so important that you've put me here twice, an overview of the vision, themes and outcomes and how those underpin everything we want to do, but the bulk will be on the highlights from our consultations. Next slide, please. One more click. Thank you. So there are 5 key takeaways. Firstly, the strategy is vision-led and outcomes-focused. This is really important. If you take one thing away, it's this. This document sets the strategic framework for everything we want to do, but it doesn't itself do it. That bit comes later. No one builds bridges just to build a bridge. We build it for the outcome, getting a resident from A to B safely. The LTP is the compass, not the map. It's also really important to note that it covers all of highways and transport, buses to bridges, assets to active travel, road to rail. Next click, please. It has strong public support, and I'll go into this in more detail later, but 86% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed with our vision and approach. That's really high for something as dry as an LTP, and we're really proud of that. Next click, please. Thank you. Our districts, and as Councillor Platt said, the combined authority needs it. The districts need it because it sets the strategic framework for all of their local plans and their transport assessments. And it helps ensure that development happens where it's needed, where growth is needed, and not just where there is a spare field. And finally, thank you, the strategy is for ECC and Essex residents. It is not a greater Essex strategy, and I'll touch on that a bit later. Thank you. So as Councillor Platt said, our last strategy was 15 years ago. Since then, how and why people have travelled has changed, and so our vision needs to change too. The strategy will guide decisions, delivery and investments. It will support the transport elements of other strategies, like our health strategies and our growth strategies. So we don't have the left hand saying, let's build where there is already infrastructure, and then the right hand saying, no, we can only do it with infrastructure first. Next slide, please. And this is the LTP in a page. You've seen all of this before, so I will just highlight a couple of points. Our vision has been expanded to include the positive contribution we make to place and people's health. And this was in response to comments we had in the consultation. The strategy is also, and that expanded vision also better reflects those three themes across the top: people, places, connecting businesses, and highlights how transport is an enabler of so much more. Next slide, please. And now into the consultation responses. So as I said, a whopping 86% supported the vision, and almost as equally high between 83 and 87 support for the three key themes. Again, this is really positive. Next slide, please. Equally, very high support for all 9 outcomes, ranging from 76 to 92. There is an appendix document that we sent through that has more detail on all the consultation outputs, so I'm just giving the high levels here. Next slide, please. Under all the outcomes are activities which support the delivery of those aspirations. I'm not going to go through these in detail beyond demonstrating that they show a greater range, but are all still positive, ranging from 57 through to 95. Next slide, please. Alongside the strategy, the core strategy, we developed 13 place-based strategies. Each one of these includes an introduction to the local area, the current transport situation, local challenges, and those residents' needs. We then set out our transport aspirations for those areas and the outcomes we want to achieve. We then assessed a potential set of interventions and prioritised those against outcomes and everyone's Essex. These interventions are ideas. They are not designed, costed or approved. Ideas identified within the LTP we further developed as part of a broader ECC programme as funding and opportunity becomes available. Next slide, please. So this is the map of the place-based geographies. Alistair calls it our fuzzy map. I think it looks like an Ewok. You won't be able to get that out of your mind now. And these geographies are very intentionally fuzzy and not district-based. And that is because transport disregards boundaries. When you're travelling on the A120, you go through multiple districts. So our data shows that these fuzzy geographies reflect the typical journeys that people make in Essex. It's also very agile and can flex and move as LGR progresses. Next slide, please. So the place-based strategies got fewer responses in the consultation because people only commented on the areas that they are directly interested or involved in, whether they are places they live or work. Support remains high, ranging from 67 to a huge 90% in Harlow. Harlow are very happy. Next slide, please. Another element of the transport strategy is place and movement. Again, you've seen this before, but to refresh, journeys are different. How and why people move around Essex changes from place to place and person to person. If you are driving along the A120 from Bathside Bay to Stansted, it's a strategic journey. If you are walking your child to Kendal Primary School in Colchester, how you use that space will be very different. Streets need to reflect these different users and these different types of journey. We need a flexible approach which lets us focus on the needs of place and its users. Next slide, please. So this is the place and movement matrix. It considers movement, how you get around, but also place. So what is happening either side of the road? What are people doing there? Do they live there? Do they work there? Are there businesses? Is it shops? Is it places people stop and hang out? Or is it just how people get from A to B? Sets out 9 different types of street with movement on the y-axis and place along the x-axis. In the consultation, this was 81% either agreed or strongly agreed. A more flexible approach was needed. Next slide, please. Also, as part of the consultation, we asked for any other comments. I'm not going to go through these in detail, and if you want to read all 1,000, they are in the extended consultation report document, but I will highlight 2 points. The first is many of these were highly specific around specific roads, specific bus routes. The LTP isn't intended to address those. As I said, it's the compass, it's not the concrete. The strategies underneath the LTP, modal strategies and thematic strategies, are where those will be addressed. And there is a slide in the appendix which shows a pyramid of the sort of the hierarchy of different strategies. The second is an unusual highlight on vulnerable users, which is obviously hugely important. Of the 168 responses we got, 60% were about horses. So we have taken, in a subsequent slide, I'll talk through changes we have made to the existing draft, and as part of that we have made better provision and make sure that we are aware that non-motorised vehicles, including equine, do use our network. But that doesn't in any way disregard the remaining 40% of the comments we've got. And one of our proposals is an accessibility review to make sure that we are genuinely meeting the needs of all our residents. Next slide, please. A quick demographic overview. Fairly standard gender split and typical age demographic. Whilst it does reflect the county demographic, it does highlight that, as ever with strategies and consultations, we do need to get better at reaching younger people. We are adopting this vision for them. Next slide, please. Specifically on our accessibility groups, of the 152 who self-identified as having either a mental or physical impairment, 82% supported the vision, and between 89 and 93 agreed with the themes. Which is really, really positive endorsement. Next slide, please. And obviously the whole point of going out to consultation is to hear feedback from our residents and what they think of our proposals and make changes where we should. I won't go through in detail, but to highlight a few. We've expanded the vision, as I've already mentioned. We've increased the focus on Vision Zero. Safety has to be a strategic priority. We've added more detail on the links with health and social care to align with their strategies and transport's role in it. And we've added in some additional performance measures to help us track progress and gauge whether we are being too aspirational or not aspirational enough. And final slide, please. It's been a journey. From early engagement in 2023 to hopeful adoption in 2026, this will have taken 3 years. And that is typical. When we looked at the duration of their LTP journeys in other councils, and particularly those moving into combined authorities, 3 years is typical. So if the mayor doesn't start one until 2028, they won't have an LTP until the earliest 2030, 2031, which is why it's so important that we take this through to Cabinet, we take this through to full council and ensure the smoothest transition we can, not relying on a transport strategy, as brilliant as it was, Alistair, but it was written by then 20 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation. Can anybody who would like to ask a question, make your mic still knows. Anybody this side? Nothing here. Who was first over here? James. James, yeah, lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tracy, you did touch on this, and I was interested in about demographics of the consultation response. And that demographic was the under 25 responses that was almost absent. And I'm really disappointed with that, because just this week I was in Rayleigh High Street and there was primary school children doing a traffic survey. So that response to me isn't, I wouldn't say is really reflective of the interest. And I think you alluded to the fact that this is for those residents. So I don't know why it's so low and what steps were taken to address the gap. I mean, did you go into schools with this consultation? I'm interested to know why it is so poor and underrepresented, that demographic, because I think we've really missed a trick here, if I'm honest.
So we don't know why it's so underrepresentative, so I can only hypothesise. We didn't go into schools, and that's a useful thing for us to consider in future. As we start to do a greater Essex LTP, I think we need better and earlier public engagement. The consultation and the consultation documents, because the LTP statutory are long and extensive and probably not geared to a younger audience. We did a lot of work to produce very accessible summaries, but even the summary was 40, 50 pages long. Is that too much to ask busy people, young people, any people to do? Maybe. We did do video to try and land that. We looked at different media and medium to reach different audiences. Honestly, not being able to use TikTok is a problem. We've been advised. That is where I'm told, and I'm so not in that demographic either, where the young people are. But just on Facebook means we're talking to the same demographics over and over. So from what I have been told by our broader consultation teams, this split is not unusual. And even when we do the Essex resident survey, which is supposed to reflect the age demographic of Essex, it is still heavily skewed to the older age brackets. So it's not a satisfactory answer. I think there is more we can do. I agree. I think it's partly contextual and partly circumstantial.
Okay.
Okay, would it be fair to say whilst we might not be talking to the children at schools, is it possible that in other parts of the survey you picked up their parents or their grandparents who tend to play a bigger role as well in transport?
Yeah, we can safely assume that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Land?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd be very interested to know how Southend and Thurrock are progressing with their plans. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay. And how does this vision support vulnerable residents would be interesting to find out. I think you've touched on it, how the public has been involved in the strategy would be helpful to enhance on, please.
So Southend and Thurrock, as the other transport authorities in the Greater Essex geography, are and have been progressing their own LTPs. We are all on LTP 4. Thurrock's has just gone out to consultation, and we will be responding as ECC as a partner. Southend have written theirs, but I don't know the latest on that. They had proposed to go out summer 26 after the mayoral elections. Now those have been postponed. I don't know what that means for their timeframes. Their approach, both of them, is different to ECC's, both in terms of scale, obviously, but also the level of detail that they can go to. So our strategy obviously has to cover all 12 districts and a much larger population, so we don't go into route specifics, whereas Southend and Thurrock's do a little bit more. In terms of vulnerable users and how they were engaged, we worked with several organisations who actually emailed us early doors to say they didn't think our materials were as good as they could be. And that was really helpful, actually, because it established a partnership where we're now working with them on a more regular basis to say, OK, this is what we're trying to say, and we want to do it in a helpful and inclusive way without, inadvertently misrepresenting or patronising or infantilising. And so as a result of that engagement, we've got a better way of presenting our message, and we will hopefully continue that. What it did highlight from some of the comments is that whilst we do always consider accessibility, because this is transport and safety for all, we don't always give it as much attention as we should. And so that's prompted the proposal that we do a transport accessibility review strategy as part of one of the sort of a new child strategy to the LTP to make sure we're giving this the attention we need. And as we move into a combined authority, this is actually a really good time to do it, to make sure we've got a equal and equalising approach for Greater Essex. In terms of public engagement, this is a statutory strategy, so we went out twice to public consultation. We engaged very proactively with districts, with the stakeholders. But again, as I was alluding to, we can always do more. And for a Greater Essex LTP, I want to find a way of hearing that voice sooner. We don't have an Essex-wide transport forum, because if every directorate did that, you'd have survey overload and no one would respond to anything. Making better use of the Essex Residents Survey is one way of doing that, but again, we have to be careful not to overload. I would acknowledge that we're not as good as we could be. I don't think that's an LTP specific thing. It's very difficult for consultation, any consultation, to reach anyone who's not sort of proactively interested. If you do a cycling strategy, the people who respond are those who are very pro or those who are very anti. If you are happily in the middle, or get on your bike whenever, but you don't have strong views either way, it's the silent majority. And we found that with most consultations. So.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
What about the TikTok comment you made? So, where was the restrictions there? What were the restrictions in terms of using just a general ECC blockage?
As far as I was last informed, and if I am out of date with social media, that wouldn't be the first time. But you're not allowed to use TikTok as a channel.
Okay, fair enough. We
can use Facebook. But Facebook has its own very specific demographic. And if I'm to quote an 11-year-old close to me, it's for old people. Yeah, you want TikTok or whatever's next. Frankly, if I've heard of TikTok, it's TikTok. TikTok. If I've heard of TikTok, it's not cool. We need whatever's coming next. So that's probably something for the broader consultation team to pick up with comms to make sure.
Not use Instagram, Tracy?
I think we can use Insta. Again, not the best demographic for the younger people. That might get us better on the mid-30s. I don't remember off the top of my head what we did on Instagram. There is a full list of the channels we used at the end of the strategies, but I can come back to you on that.
Thank you. So just a personal interest question here. Was there much involvement or much discussion on your consultation with home to school concepts? And I'm particularly concerned about obviously home to school for children with special needs. Did any of that come across?
Not specifically, but again, that would be the next level down. So this is setting the strategy for the aspiration of transport. Home to school would come up in the education strategy and alongside the bus strategy.
Okay.
We can double check if any comments came out of it though.
I'd be interested in that, only because obviously to a certain extent it's an obligation. And with an obligation comes a financial commitment, and I suspect that in the years to come, certainly in the immediate years to come, that will take up more and more of the budget, and more of the, and of course it does that, especially children with special needs, where sometimes there's only one or two allowed per car, and sometimes with or without a carer. Okay, so Councillor Scordis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, quite interesting about how we engage. I don't know if we've done any engagement maybe in the sixth form centres that we've got across the county, or possibly university campuses getting there in person, but I think it's always a struggle with that age group. I remember being that young and frankly got other concerns and interests. So one of the biggest comments that's come up is bus services. Arguably not surprising considering demographics, but I think it does affect young people as much, especially a lot of young people aren't driving, struggling to either get driving tests or changing behaviour. And with the mayoral election delayed, it looks like any sort of bus franchising could be a decade away. And we've all seen it in our own divisions where bus companies just cut services with frankly a joke consultation, and we know that those services are used. Are we in discussion with these bus companies to actually say there is clearly some commercial sense to running these services? Because we know a lot of the villages lose their service after 5:30 at night. If you're on a late train or work shift work, you're having to get a taxi home or other means, or mum and dad cab service. So it's really difficult for many. So I think that's one of the biggest disjointed services we've got is the buses with the current dynamics we have. So are those conversations ongoing about how we can improve those night services to make sure that people do have access to jobs that are remote work and obviously for our nighttime economy?
So, at risk of repeating myself, this strategy is the compass, not the map. Those are very bus-specific questions, which are better addressed by the bus strategy, which sits the next level down. Helen Morris is our head of IPTU, and we will make sure she has your questions and responds to your answers.
The LTP would pick up the general principles about connecting places together by public transport. The bus strategy and the bus service improvement plan would look at the details of delivering it within the budget we have available to us.
You happy with that?
Well, I'm not happy because I haven't got the answer. That's fine. Yeah, no, all fine, Chair.
Okay, all right. Councillor Gadd, please.
Thanks, sir. Can I just first off, does this replace both the 2005 traffic management strategy and the Essex speed management strategy?
No, it replaces neither of those.
Okay. Because both of those, well, my understanding is both of those are very, very car-centric. And my concern with the strategy is your strategy looks great, but in terms of implementation, whenever I've tried to, and you know I've grumbled about this endlessly when you've come, but the Essex highways, broadly block any sustainable transport infrastructure, and their focus is all about car infrastructure. And whenever we have new developments, we have Section 106, it's all how can we change the roads to get more cars through. It's never how do we make it better for cyclists and pedestrians and whatever. You're shaking your head, Councillor Platt, but that is the reality. That's what happened. If you came to Saffron Walden, you would struggle to find a single bit of infrastructure that's been put in that encourages cycling and pedestrians.
So we expect...
Sorry. So I was just going to say, whilst obviously the strategy is there, it relies on implementation, and the same with the cycle strategy, nothing was achieved under the previous cycle strategy if there was no implementation. So what's happening behind this in terms of changing highways policies and practices to make sure that this is actually implemented?
So slide 20 in your decks is the pyramid I was referring to about the hierarchy of strategies. So LTP is in the middle quadrant. You have quadrants and triangles. The middle slice of statutory strategies. Underneath that is the safer speed strategy and the traffic management strategy. So we hope, capacity permitting, that the safer speed strategy, the new one, that will address a number of your concerns, I hope, Councillor Gadd, will be out to public consultation in the new year. The traffic management strategy is being updated as we speak. There are capacity constraints there as well, and I don't have a time frame on that, but I will share that when I do. Underneath that, and a layer that's not on this chart, are what we know as highways practice notes, and those are really for our highways officers and engineers on the ground that help translate, the highfalutin strategies over here to what does it mean on the ground. Because these down here have to reflect the aspiration and the vision up here, it has to be a cascade approach. So all of these things are happening, but we have to nail LTP first.
And how does the traffic management strategy relate to the LTP?
It's also, it's actually also strategic. It is the remit of the traffic manager, and actually I'm going to look and see if Haruna can explain this one better than I can.
Yes, so the good morning everyone. The traffic management strategy is there to manage our network to ensure that it's safe and the local highways authority are discharging their statutory obligations as required and the network keeps flowing. So the LTP, as Tracy has very accurately described, sets out sort of the vision of what sort of movement we would like on our network. So that's how the two interrelate.
And just to be clear, when you talk about traffic management, does traffic include pedestrians, cyclists, etc., or is it just motorised?
It's everything. It's movement on the network.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steele?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to be a bit more critical, actually, forgive me. I think it's been a long time coming, this LTP4. And I have to say the word plan in the title throws me, and I think there's some of the comments coming here. It's not a plan, it's a strategy. So I would rename it if I were you. And what we're all really excited and waiting for, what comes next, which is the speed strategy, the traffic management strategy, etc. I find it's a bit vague, and I'll read one thing out, and I wonder whether the public in the consultation would find it vague. For example, on page 98, it says, implement our place and movement approach to help embed the principles of healthy streets and manage the transport network effectively for both existing streets and new developments. I mean, it's words, but it's not actions. It's not an action plan for me. And I know you're going to explain it's a strategy. And it's been a long time, 3 years to get to this point, and we still haven't got the meat on the bones that we all want to see, because it sets expectations with the public. And those people are saying, oh, does that mean I'm going to get 20 miles? I've looked at the 3x3 matrix. I think I'm top left or bottom right, whatever. Therefore, I'm going to get 20, and their expectations are being set, and we're not informing them whether that's really going to happen. And we've got to wait for the speed strategy. So I'm feeling a bit impatient, but forgive me. I know this is, we have to work with public sector and consultation and so on. But in terms of timescale, if this is adopted, what does that mean in terms of the unitaries going forward? Do they then have the choice taking it on, or do they start again? And I know you say, come the mayor election, then it would take them 3 years to get there. They've got a starting point, but they don't have to accept it, or do they? How does this relate to going forward with LGR and the unitaries? Do they reject it, or do they adopt it, or what?
So my understanding is, as it is, so whether it is ECC, Southend and Thurrock, and the combined authority concurrently as transport authorities, it's the transport authorities that own and have statutory responsibility for the LTP.
So it sits at that higher level, does it?
It does. Yeah. But the unitaries have to pay regard to that with their local plans. We don't know exactly what the provision or what the expectation of unitaries will be in terms of local plans. Will they move from the individual districts that they've got at the moment, the 12 district local plans? The current guidance is, proceed until apprehended. Until there is clarity on what new or additional or concurrent expectation there is on unitaries, the LTP will continue to be a statutory document for districts to regard in their preparation of their local plan. It's never been mandated, and Devo and LGR will make no difference.
So in terms of Thurrock and Southend, did you say Thurrock are doing something similar? They're doing their LTP4 at the moment.
All three of us are all doing our LTP.
So there'll be 3 LTP4s when the combined authority is created.
Yes.
And that will have to be merged into one?
Well, that is ultimately a decision for somebody else. What has typically happened in other combined authorities in this situation is the combined authority adopts however many as an interim, and so they do have 3, whilst they progress their own. You can't mush them together, technical term, because we may have very different approaches, very different objectives, and it's not our decision as the outgoing authorities to presuppose what it is a combined authority wants to say or the future priorities of the mayor. What we have done, which won't completely placate your impatience, is acknowledging how long LTPs take. Southend, Thurrock and Essex are already working together to create a joint evidence base so that at the appropriate time we can present that to whomever in the combined authority and say, this is what the data is saying to us. What do you want to do with this to create your LTP?
And that will be true of the next level down speed strategy, for example, as well. And on which one, I think it says somewhere in here that the speed strategy will go for consultation in November 26. So presumably working on in parallel. Speed strategy working in parallel.
Strategy we're expecting to go early new year. So
The speed strategy. Okay.
I'll find that reference and update it. One of the pieces of work that we need to do as the three authorities is policy and strategy alignment. I don't know off the top of my head what Thurrock's safer speed strategy is or what Southend's cycling strategy is. All of these, all the strategies for all the current transport authorities will need to be harmonised at some point. But as an interim, the combined authority will adopt.
But you would expect that street strategy to be crossed Essex, across the mayoral.
It's a decision for the mayor. The speed strategy is not a statutory requirement for the combined authority.
Okay.
There's only 4 or 5 local growth plan, the spatial development strategy and the skills
So the
strategy.
unitaries could create their own speed strategies then.
They could, but they're not the transport authority. So it would depend on the nature of it. So the unitaries will become, we're getting onto deeper Devo and LGR discussions, and some of this is still not known. But the unitaries are expected to become the highways authorities. So they will write the highways strategies. The combined authority is the transport authority. They will write the transport strategies.
The speed one fits in the transport one, not the highways one.
Depends, again, on focus. If it's very implementation of focus, we will do this to these sorts of junctions and this to these sorts of junctions, then yes, it's probably highways. Or there might be, complementary. The frameworks and the guiding principles are set here. Implementation is here.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I won't push it anymore. I guess the public out there, though, really they're asking questions like, can I have 20 mile an hour in my village? That's what, and this doesn't answer it. And all what you've described says, does actually push it down, further down the road. And that's, the public out there looking for those answers.
Alistair?
Just picking up the point on why it's called a plan. The LTP, local transport plan, is what is referred to in the legislation. So technically this is a local transport plan. But with even the LTP, we always refer to as our transport strategy. This is our transport strategy and it's called the Better Connected Essex. But legally it is the local transport plan. So that's why there's a certain sort of confusion as to whether it's a plan or a strategy. And why it's sometimes referred to as the LTP and the plan.
All consultation materials call it a transport strategy. We're just a bit lazy internally and just default to LTP because it's easy.
Just picking up Councillor Steele's comments and also Councillor Scordis over here, there is this question, well, what's going to happen in my village, what's going to happen in my town? You talk about the speed strategy going forward, and we've got to make assumptions that things will go forward. But is it realistic for us to ask that when you get into the speed strategy area, that itself comes back here?
I think I'm not sure what the question is. Scrutiny ask us
Can
to...
we scrutinise the speed strategy before it's adopted?
Before it's adopted, yes.
Oh, okay. So can we put that on your agenda for and for our work programme?
Of course.
And I think, to be blunt, as a lot of people have said, you do get that is the question. Why can't the 60 be 40? Why can't the 40 be 30? Why can't the 30 be 20? Why can't everybody be doing 20? Those are the questions that we get asked time after time after time. Okay, thank you. But if
Could we add the traffic management strategy to that as well as the speed one?
Yeah, through the traffic management.
can we do that? Is that realistic as far as you're concerned?
We don't have a time frame for the traffic management strategy.
Okay.
But when we do, we'll make sure we factor in.
But on the
Safer speed strategy is due to go out to consultation early next year. So
Okay.
we would then have responses back probably after county elections if we're having them. Everything I'm saying yes to is caveated with it depends where we end up and exactly where the powers go and when, because some of this may change depending on vesting day for the combined authority.
And a lot of other things.
And a lot of other things, yes.
One or two other things. Okay, thank you for that. If we can just note that, and we'll that'll be something we'll have to. Councillor Fleming.
Just on that, we'd normally try and look at it before it went out for consultation, wouldn't we?
Would we before or after consultation?
I think before is the practice, I think, because otherwise it's a bit late.
We did this one,
consultation.
we did before consultation, and we've just now done after consultation.
And before consultation seems to me to make more sense.
Which is the ability to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we take that as a request?
I would request that be made to Councillor Cunningham direct, as
Okay.
he is very keen that this goes out.
Chairman, can we just, when we're talking about consultations, Tracy, can we just pick up on that point of that underrepresentation in future consultations and how we're going to, or you're going to look to address that gap? Because I would debate with you about Instagram engagement, because I've got young people in my household that are in that bracket and they do use Instagram and a lot of their friends do. So I think it should be looked at again because I think they're underrepresented. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chairman. Tracy, welcome back. I was quite surprised when I read this document because when you were here before, and I can't remember when it was, sometime...
November 23.
23. So you brought your draft LTP4 and it was quite different in tone, I think. Am I right in thinking there's been a slight pivot? Because there was a lot of focus on the sort of road classification and how that would be different. Whereas it's a good document, but there's nothing that controversial in it. Whereas I remember the draft of the LTP4 that you brought, I was quite surprised because it was quite radical. Whereas this seems slightly different in tone. Or have I got the wrong end of the stick?
Nice movement.
Yeah, so I don't think anything's changed. For the first consultation, we went out with the themes and outcomes and place and movement. The second consultation, we went out with more detailed activities under the outcomes and the place-based strategies. So nothing has changed. We didn't reconsult on place and movement because we'd already done it in part one. What you're seeing, I suppose, is the consultation results from both altogether. But the only tone changes might have been around narrative and us trying to land this document in a more accessible, less technical, jargony framework. But No, I don't think we have changed the fundamental objectives at all.
Okay.
The broad outcomes have been stable for some time now, haven't they? You tweak the vision in response to consultation, but the broad outcomes, that chart with the three outcomes and the material underneath that, that's been fairly stable for some time now.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Lissamore.
Thank you. Just a quick question really on future technology. So obviously with Alistair here, you can see perhaps how the last, 20 years, did we envisage internet use the way it is now? Are you confident that the strategy gives you the flexibility that you need to encompass new technologies that we don't even know exist at the moment?
Yes. We make open reference to evolving technologies and those we don't yet know about. Underneath one of the, not outcomes, what's next? I'm blanking. Activities is around actually, the digital provision necessary for many of these things to work that we don't even know about. I mean, at the moment, yes, we know it's app-based or whatever, and if you don't have a good Wi-Fi signal, you can have the best DigiGo service in the world or other, but if you can't actually find it on your phone, it doesn't work. So it's a good example of, cross-sectoral stuff. Is the question prompted by anything more?
Only I felt that Essex was a little bit slow to embrace the electric scooters, electric cycle model as an example. When you went to other cities in Europe, particularly that had them for quite a long time, and I think it was more perhaps central government rather than Essex sort of said, oh, these things exist, right? We must put some legislation through to allow users in this country. So I think I sort of saw it with that, and if a backpack becomes available for me to go from Colchester to Chelmsford in the future, I want us to be at the forefront to allow me to use that. So it's very difficult to say what is going to happen in the future, obviously. But you're very right to say that a lot of it's going to be about the bandwidth and Wi-Fi and the accessibility. And I always, and this is not a derogatory term, that the lowest common denominator when you talk particularly about app-based things, those people that do not have access to good Wi-Fi or a good phone even, or even digitally connected, we must never, ever forget them. Ever, because whilst they will become less and less as we move forward, they will still exist. They will always exist, and we've got to make sure that we make provision for them.
We've certainly tried to write it so that it enables stuff we haven't thought of to be considered. And so if you look at the Local Transport Plan 3, which was 2010, 2011, we're writing that. And if you look at what it says, the general principles within it are still relatively current, and we can still use it as an authority. The detail is what's gone out of date, and there's things like it refers to, was it Essex Works was the corporate document at the time, and things like that look very dated. But the general principles within it enabled us to introduce things like e-scooters. The LTP didn't stop us doing that. So we've tried to write it in that sort of way so that if something does happen in 5 or 6 years' time that none of us have thought of, we can at least consider it and how we might use it in Essex. The LTP didn't stop us doing that.
And you're confident as well that those that are digitally excluded, who obviously wouldn't have had access to the consultation, are provided for in the future as you move forward?
I think that will also come up when we do the accessibility review. And it's part of a broader, digital isolation. That's not the word, but digital connectivity strategy more broadly for Essex, because consultation is not specific to transport.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your answers. To move forward, do we have a proposition?
Yeah, can I propose that we note the strategy but we also note our concerns about the underrepresentation of younger people. Is that acceptable to committee?
Everybody happy with that? Okay, and add to that, or included in that, if possible, this thing about the speed strategy as a matter. Okay, anything else? Thank you, Tracy, Alistair and Councillor Platt for your input. Anything you want to finish off with, Councillor Platt?
I'm fine, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, but once again, thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions. We won't have a break, but we've got a 2-minute shuffle, have we? Where the warm-up act goes off and the...
Thank you very much, everybody, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
We're going to put a couple short.
Yeah, they're probably, I'm guessing.
30 seconds in. Welcome back. We're now moving on to item 5 on the agenda. So we now welcome to the meeting Councillor Tom Cunningham. Good morning, Tom, who's a Cabinet Member for Highways, Infrastructure and Sustainable Transport. He's accompanied by Tom Blackburn-Mays, who is a Director of Place and Reorganisation, and David Gibson, Executive Director for Climate, Environment and Customer Services. We also have with us now Katie Bray, who is Head of Legal, in attendance, just in case there are any questions we come up with. For those who are following on the agenda, agenda item 5 is page 147 of 219. You will recall that at our last meeting, the committee considered 2 call-ins on the proposed cabinet decision about procurement of highway services. It was agreed at that meeting to allow the proposed decision to be implemented without further delay, subject to the undertaking given by the cabinet member at the time that he will not implement the decision until the cabinet report had been scrutinised by the committee. And today represents that opportunity. We agreed as a committee that the questions should be submitted in advance by members with a focus on issues not fully addressed in the original cabinet report. As such, 15 questions were submitted ahead of the 26th of November deadline, and written answers have now been prepared by officers under Appendix 1. And where possible, questions that were received slightly after the deadline have been incorporated in others that have been submitted. So we now have a debate. This is for discussion and a decision, and we would like to focus the debate on these questions as in Appendix 1. We agreed that questions would be raised in advance to ensure that officers were given proper time to prepare. So I would be reluctant for members to introduce any new issues at this stage. Members will note that last night's amended version of the presentation and answers were circulated. So I will ask at some stage initially for officers to summarise those, because not everybody had the opportunity to note the small changes. So we begin the presentation on the work of the Future Highways programme, and then we'll open the plan for discussions. And the action required on page 147 is the committee is asked to consider the written answers received in the presentation and the original cabinet report. So welcome to you, Tom, David and Tom. Hopefully you're familiar with us now and you're happy on first name terms. So welcome. Could you first of all just deal with the amended version of the presentation?
Yes, I'll ask Tom to do that. Thank you.
Yes, so apologies, committee, to chair that. The changes were made on the back of legal advice that we received a couple of days ago.
Do you want to just highlight what, so we know what we're looking at, just from or anything significant really is what we're looking for?
There were two main pieces. One, we are going out to procure a number of different contracts and not just one contract, and I'll explain that through the presentation. And so it was a factual change that we needed to be made to you, and that was the only change in terms of that, and also a reference to novation of the contracts. We have clarified that within our responses now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunningham, I hand the floor over to yourself.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. It's good to be back with you. And from the outset, can I just say thank you very much to you and the committee for the way that you facilitated the questions in advance, giving officers enough time to comprehensively respond. I think that's worked extremely well. In terms of the body of the presentation, we'll have a few introduction slides, if that's okay, and then there will be a series of comprehensive responses on slides to the questions that you have posed. Can I suggest that we might be able to just get through our introduction slides first before there's any questions on the introductory slides? Then, of course, it's up to you, Chairman, and the committee as to how you would like to take the answers that have been given on the questions that have been submitted beforehand. We have said before that this is an issue of great complexity and difficulty at an unprecedented time, and that's very much informed how we have approached this and where we've got to where we are. The safety of a network, 5,000 miles of it, is difficult and complex, and this is the universal service that all our residents use. We totally and utterly appreciate the role of scrutiny and support it. And in fact, it's something that as a cabinet, we're very, very mindful, whether we're the continuing administration or whoever may be the new administration to see us through the transition, places a high premium and emphasis in terms of the scrutiny process at every stage as we go through local government reform and devolution. But I think it is worth reflecting on a couple of things before we set out on the presentation today. One of the call-ins was actually on slightly false information. The fact that we'd actually issued a renewal of a contract in its entirety, in its current form, to Ringway Jacobs. That was a factual inaccuracy. And I'm very conscious that many of those call-in, members who were keen on this being called in, some didn't actually turn up to the informal pre-meet and weren't present during the meeting where we brought this to scrutiny, the call-in meeting. This was also subject to motions at full council, quite vigorous debate, and again, I don't quarrel with that. That's healthy in a democracy. But the problem was there were some figures quoted in those debates that were highly inaccurate. The fact that we are procuring an order book of £3 billion. There's never been a £3 billion order book for highways in this county, or the 12 districts that we serve, and that certainly wasn't the case for this new arrangement. So I think it's just very, very important we clarify these points. I'm hugely mindful that regarding this contract, the market is watching the process, possibly watching the proceedings, rightly so. But more importantly, the public are also watching this, and our residents. And they have a huge expectation on the sector to deliver change, unprecedented change, over a 2-year period. This is the first of many difficult contract renewals that Essex will have to navigate its way through. It's next to nothing compared to the complexity across the rest of the sector as well. And I just think we need to be careful about how we approach these things, and political commentary is political commentary, but actually it must be based on factual accuracy, or we undermine the whole process for all our residents. So there's just a couple of points I wanted to make from the outset. Obviously, we're here to be as open and as transparent as possible. I would just caveat again that there are naturally elements of this negotiations, this process, that are commercially sensitive. So if we have to be reticent for reasons of commercial sensitivity, I do ask for your forbearance and your appreciation of that. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the presentation.
Sorry, yes. So, Tom, sorry, Chairman, to interrupt. Tom, sorry, just for clarity, I think the 3 billion has been quoted because on the Find a Tender website, it does say that estimated is up to 3 billion, including VAT, and I think that's the distinction between what you're saying in terms of the up to 2 and the 3. It's because of the VAT has been quoted on there. And I've got the page here and I can send it to you. Well, sorry.
It's scrutiny and the process is being done on the Cabinet report, and it's 2 billion that was in the
I was just saying what's on the website, well, just for clarity.
Again, these issues of clarity and information, it was suggested that we were looking for a total order book of £3 billion. We're not. The Cabinet paper suggests 2 billion, says £2 billion. That's what the call-in was on the premise of. So moving on to the presentation through you, Chairman, if I may, could we just flick on to the first slide? Sorry, oh, sorry, we're over there. Apologies, Control. Thank you very much.
In front of you.
I've just got the agenda, so sorry, could I go on to the next one? Thank you very much. And I'm afraid you've probably seen this before, but this does frame the context of what we're dealing with in terms of this service. Nearly 5,000 miles of road, over 1,600 bridges, over nearly 132,000 street lights. The figures are here, a huge, enormous, complex network across a vast geographical area. The next slide, please. So, the executive summary, the procurement of the new integrated highway services contracts to replace the current highways contract which expires. We've come to the end of that contract, that existing contract. And as we've said, this is about residents and to deliver best value across a complex service whilst trying to minimise the burden upon successor authorities, of which their first year in 27-28 will be very much focused on a safe and legal organisation in order to deliver services, very much at the forefront of our thinking. And because we are seeking industry support, industry involvement, the decision was taken to have an industry standard NEC4 term service contract. That is something the industry, I understand, can relate to, and it makes for an easier process. So a 7-year term, £1 billion forecast spending, £2 billion ceiling. And the contracts will transfer to new local government structures, the new unitary authorities, the successor authorities in April 2028, and to be delivered in 2, 3, 4, 5 lots, dependent on government's final judgment on LGR in Essex. And key to this, learning from errors, learning from mistakes, learning from frailties, I would say, within the existing structure, a larger and more intelligent client, enabling better commissioning and greater oversights of services to enhance value for money and to provide local government reform resilience. So the case for change, as we said, contract ends on the 31st of March. The previous contracting operating model was designed 15 years ago. In this business, and I look at the industry experts here, that's a lifetime ago. Things have changed on immeasurably. We have listened to the feedback, and key to that was the all-party member reference group, which was extremely well supported, and engagement levels were extremely high, and generated some very, very valuable considerations which we have blended into this whole approach. And the model selected is a single provider model, contractor and professional services with the intelligent commissioning client, an enhanced function, check and challenge, swifter, easier procurement and processing of orders, which I think I've covered off actually there. I would just draw attention to the penultimate square bullets there. The length of this contract is 7 years. We do not yet know the full extent of innovation advances in this industry, and therefore, when we go to tender and award contract, a key element will be in the value side of the contract piece, of the procurement piece, will be to see how potential providers have the potential and scope to respond to innovations in the sector, because that's going to be hugely important, not just in terms for financial efficiency, but the long-term efficiency, the long-term stewardship, frankly, making repairs last longer on a network. And indeed, as we've said, we're doing this with the great unknown, with the known fact that we've got LGR. We don't know what it's going to exactly look like at this stage as we end calendar year 2025. Could I have the next slide, please? Right, is that over to you, Tom?
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. So currently, Essex County Council has one of the smallest client teams in the country, managing the largest highways contract. The new team will enable the council to manage the new form of contract that we have effectively. It will be able to deliver best value to the residents of Essex and provide the increased resilience to the LGR changes that are coming. The new team will be focused in 3 areas: a strategic highways team, delivering the long-term planning and informed investment decisions for the council. The local highways team will be focused on reactive and responsive maintenance of the highway network, and the contract management team will be focused on the management and quality assurance of the works delivered. There will be one contract per new unitary boundary. Each unitary will be able to manage their own contract and commission their own works that they choose. This provides each unitary authority with the necessary safe and legal highways and transport services that they will need to deliver their statutory duties from day one, whilst giving them the flexibility to make any changes that they might choose to. The procurement will be launched containing all the information that we currently know about the proposed changes that will come from LGR. And once a final decision has been determined by the government on the LGR boundaries, or if this is delayed, bidders will be advised of modifications to the tender documentation and asked to provide their responses and their prices for the services. The timeline shown here, the piece at the top shows the different stages of the procurement process for the new contract. The chart in the middle shows the different activities that need to be undertaken through that procurement process. And the timeline on the bottom shows the implementation of the council's new operating model in order to be able to manage the new contract. So you can see all of those three things need to happen along that timeline at the same time. I'll now summarise, because you've had this presentation and you've had answers even in more detail to each of these questions in your packs. So in terms of question 1, the business readiness plan has been developed to enable the new intelligent client team to be mobilised effectively before the new contract goes live. It will be delivered in stages, enabling the new processes and systems to be developed and validated, and the new teams to be recruited and trained in the new way of working before the go-live date. The financial risk identified from any increased red claims is considered a very low risk. Within the new operating model, the council will continue to prioritise our statutory duties in providing a safe network for all of our residents and users, as the current provider currently does. The contract has been designed to be flexible and enables all the unitaries to deliver their statutory duties for their residents. As I have said before, the unitaries will be able to choose what works they wish to commission through their own contracts aligned to their own priorities, with no guarantee of spend or exclusivity for any works or services within their contracts. In accordance with the Cabinet decision, the Executive Director, in consultation with the Cabinet member, Section 151 officer and the Monitoring Officer, is authorised to make any decisions during the tender process. The overall scope and quantities pan-Essex, that is excluding the areas of Southend-on-Sea and Thurrock, are expected to remain consistent irrespective of the number of unitaries chosen by government. If the decision is delayed, and should the government's decision be different to that which was assumed in the tender instruction, the contract includes appropriate mechanisms to manage any changes fairly and transparently.
Thank you. Can I just ask quickly how many unitaries you're assuming?
We have not made that decision yet.
Thank you. Sorry.
Inflation will be determined by using the BCIS indices, which is the preferred industry standard method for this type of contract. Any scope changes will be made using the mechanisms within the contract, which are designed to ensure a fair and transparent assessment for all parties and Greater Essex residents. Data migration will be tested at a number of different stages during the mobilisation of the new operating model and contract to ensure its validity. This will be done by a combination of the new contractor, the Highway Service, Information Technology Service colleagues, and assured by separate independent auditors as required. Any abnormal pricing will be identified using a combination of using existing delivery costs and data from other similar contracts across the country. The negotiation phase of the procurement process enables the Council to request any supporting evidence we might need to substantiate any anomalies identified. Whilst we don't expect any non-compliant bids, The council reserves the right to disqualify any bidder due to any abnormally low pricing that it is not able to substantiate sufficiently to us. The competitive procurement process will identify the provider who is able to deliver the most advantageous tender for the residents of Essex. The council will continue to prioritise the delivery of its statutory duties within its budget envelopes to maintain a safe highways and transport network for all residents to use. The new KPIs are designed to ensure that the right standard of services and value for money is delivered to Essex residents in accordance with the new contract. Performance mechanisms are specified alongside each KPI to determine what actions can be taken when the standards aren't met or when they are exceeded. The council, the current provider, and likely any new provider have extensive TUPE experiences and in particular highway services which have been taking place since the early 1990s under CCT. The new provider will be asked, as part of their tender submission, to provide a detailed mobilisation plan and their plans for mitigating any risks and associated contingency measures needed through that time and through that process. Early work has already started with the incumbent provider to enable demobilisation of the existing contract to be aligned. And this was the point that has been changed in the presentation, that the new contracts will automatically transfer to the new unitary authorities on vesting day. This enables the new authorities to meet their statutory duties from day one, whilst providing them with the ability to choose what services they wish to deliver through their own contract to align with their own priorities. Within the new Essex County Council client, a new contract management team will be established to manage the contract effectively and provide the necessary assurance to both the council and Essex residents that the work undertaken is to the standards specified within the contracts. The greatest challenge for the existing highways team has been in having one of the smallest client teams in the country managing the largest highways contract. The new operating model addresses this by bringing in the necessary capacity and capability to enable informed investment decisions to be made, delivering greater value for money to Essex residents. Southend-on-Sea are intending to commence a new 7-year highways contract on the 1st of April 2026, with the possibility of extensions up to 14 years. Thurrock Council operates a mixed economy model with an in-house operational team and multiple contracts with different providers and different end dates. The new Essex County Council contracts exclude these areas but are flexible, and these areas can be added at a later time to the contracts if the new unitaries choose to do so. And final slide, 7 years is the minimum optimal period for a highways and transport service of this size, which I have already said is the largest one of its type in the country. This period aligns with recent procurements in Hertfordshire, Norfolk, Warwickshire, Kent and Southend, none of whose contracts are less than 7 years, and all of which can be extended to between 13 and 21 years in different permutations. A 7-year contract enables new unitary authorities to deliver their statutory duties, establish themselves as they mature, and to be able to procure a new highway service contract themselves when they are more able to do so. A shorter contract length would not be attractive to the market, could be highly likely to result in a tender failure or increased costs, and would not provide enough time for the new unitaries to procure a contract themselves to deliver their statutory duties.
Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, committee, we said what we wanted. We set some restrictions, we set some deadlines. We had the questions, 15 of them. They've been answered. They've been explained slightly more. So I'd officially like to move forward. So I'm just going to say to those people that submitted a question, is there any part of any of the questions that you've had submitted where you've had an answer where you'd like to add anything? So this exclusively talks about the 15 questions and those people that submitted. You put yourself at the top. Okay. Councillor Land. Councillor Blackwell. I am aware that there are... Yeah, OK. So let's just start with Councillor Land.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you just touch on the comment around we've got a very large contract but a very small client team? Who is that client team that we're talking about? Are they the people we ring up and the public ring up and say, I've got a pothole outside my house? That was a bit I didn't understand, sorry.
So no, so our client team is one that's headed up by our head of service, Peter Massey, and consists of 7 people.
I see.
Most of our service now is outsourced to Ringway Jacobs.
Right. Sorry, yeah, I understand my confusion now. Thank you.
So effectively, I think they run off the job orders. That's right, and then they manage the performance management of it. That's what they do. But it's actually a very small team for a huge order book.
Councillor Laxton, I think this is the first time you've been with us.
Yes, I'm substituting for Councillor McCrory.
Welcome. Hope you like what you see. You have a question.
So I've 2 follow-up points. The first relates to question 3, where it explains helpfully how the new unitaries will have a degree that they can vary both priorities and volumes. Elsewhere in the documentation, it does also talk about the potential for penalties where that variation might impinge on the unitaries. Could you clarify a bit with maybe some examples as to what level of variation might take one of the new unitaries into that penalty territory?
Yes. So what we have put into the new contracts is to enable what we'll say is cross-boundary working. And that enables the new unitaries to take advantage of economies of scale, also reduce the amount of plant resources that might be needed. So a good example might be in the delivery of a winter service and let's just say a grit run, as we call it, a salting run. Now in the future, one of those salting runs, which has been designed to ensure that we deliver our statutory duties as effectively and also as efficiently as possible, that salting gritting run might cross a boundary between different unitaries. Now, what we have said within this is that that service will continue. But if a unitary might choose to say, I do not want any gritters coming out of my depot, crossing the boundary into another unitary, then there may need to be a change to their contract because they would want to make a change, and that might increase the costs for the other authority in delivering their winter service now, because they've now got to resource additional fleet, additional people in order to be able to do that, and you'll have 2
vehicles that going around like this rather than one that crosses there.
That's
So that's an example.
So it's largely about shared plant and resources.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've one other follow-up which relates to question 13. And you talk about the weakness in the current setup being the very small client team. I'm just wondering, have you assessed any risk that in the phase of the procurement, when you're doing the detailed analysis of the tenders, that you won't, but that because of this existing weakness, you won't have enough ECC employed expertise to deliver that analysis, whether you've considered that risk or whether it's an issue or not?
Who would like to take it over?
That is for the procurement team to be doing rather than the client team.
So so they will have the highways expertise to do that detailed analysis?
Yep.
So in the meantime, we have brought in additional external expertise to be able to support the existing highway service in that area.
Thanks, Chair.
Also, internal resource within the supply chain is now been taken from operational supervision into the actual future of highways procurement process. So that integrated expertise has been effectively handed over to the management of the procurement as we go through the next stages.
Effectively, there's a resourcing plan, Councillor Loxton, that makes sure that the entire procurement is delivered effectively. And as you would expect, we will be able to go through the assessment of each tender thoroughly with the right expertise, and that will include the client.
And that will be ECC-driven staff? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Steele, I think your question is similar.
I want to pick up on the first question that came from David. And I think you said innovation is mandatory, not a choice by the unitaries. I want to confirm that statement. And I think you said they could vary the level of tasks, and I'm presuming down to zero. Is there, so two questions. Do they have to novate? Because they have to accept the novation, question one. Question two is, if they choose to reduce the work, are there any penalties to be paid as compensation events, and who pays them? Because it can't be county council, because they won't exist any longer. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to ask Katie to respond on the first part, the novation, please.
Yeah, it's a transfer rather than a novation, but the contracts will automatically transfer on vesting day in the same way that all contracts that the county council and the districts and boroughs have. They will need to.
So that's part of the LGR process that they accept, and they don't get the choice to say no.
There is some choice, and there might be some inter-authority agreements in place, because a lot of contracts will cover a number of unitary areas. So there is a process to go through. But yes, the transfer happens as part of.
So we stop using the word novation and we talk about transfers then, do we?
Yeah, transfers.
Okay, that's question one. If they then drop the level because they don't really want to use it, are there compensation events?
So there will be no compensation events.
No, you said no.
No compensation events, because there are no guarantees of work that are within the contracts.
Thank you, that's very clear then. So nobody's got to pay any money to reduce their.
But those unitary authorities must have alternative ways of being able to deliver their statutory duties.
Will there be volume-related prices that they might have to comply with? So if they halve the volume of work with the contract, they have a higher unit price or anything like that?
No, there are standard unit prices.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Very satisfactory answer. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just have some clarification on question 14? If the government decides to go on along with, say, the 5 unitaries, that would mean that Castle Point and Rochford will be in line with Southend, as they are not a part of this new contract. Who would be responsible for the highways in Rochford and Castle Point? If that means the Southend would be that responsible for that and that new authority, would that not be a massive financial burden on that new unitary? Because it will be outside this new contract where all the other unitaries will be within that contract.
So on vesting day, all three of those councils would cease to exist. Now, what we have allowed and enabled within the new contracts is for those areas of Southend and Castle Point to be delivered through this contract, and we have enabled, should that unitary decide and wish to do so, for the area of Southend to be included as well. So it'll be a decision for that new unitary to make in terms of how it delivers its statutory duties, how it delivers its highway services. Now, in that case, they will have options, because they will have an existing provider, we know from a new 7-year contract, that is delivering those areas in Southend, and they will have the ability to be able to use this contract for those other areas, or a mix and match, however they choose to do it themselves. So we have enabled that flexibility to enable that unitary to make its own decisions and not preempt what they might choose to do.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Caird.
Thanks. So it's just picking up on your answer actually to Councillor Steele's question about compensation in unitaries, etc. As I understand it, the contract has got no minimum and no exclusivity. So a unitary, if it wanted to go to someone else, could just effectively invoke the non-exclusivity, so it could just invoke another, leave the existing contract in place and just not put any volumes through it. So I want to see, but in answer to member question 11, you say unitary authorities can adjust their own scope. In doing so, they must agree and compensate any other authorities. I wasn't sure, is that just the example that you said about, okay, so it would only be
one that impacts another authority directly. So it might also be, well, you're currently delivering your reactive maintenance. People are within the depot that happens to be in my unitary. I don't want them crossing the boundary and going in there as well. So that would have an impact upon both of them. So what we're saying is you need to collaborate across the unitary boundaries and ensure that everybody agrees and understands what that might be. But if you are making a decision that impacts a cost upon another one, it is unfair for that authority to be burdened with that increasing cost.
So therefore, subject to that, in theory, a unitary could on day one just say, well, actually, that's all very interesting, but we're going to do something completely different ourselves. And not that it would necessarily be a sensible thing to do, but in theory, they could do that.
In theory, that's there, but they will have to ensure that they can deliver those statutory duties in an alternative way.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would be a good idea, but it's highly unlikely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. So I understand the flexibility that's built into this contract, but coming on the back of Councillor Blackwell's question about Southend and Thurrock, I think from previous meetings I understand that, or I might be wrong, but is this contract, does that align with their contract? I mean, this flexibility within our contract, is that built into Southend's and Thurrock's? Because one might take precedence over another contract if that flexibility is not in there, if we end up in a 5-unitary configuration.
I'm afraid I cannot answer on behalf of Southend-on-Sea or Thurrock councils on their contracts and what's included and what isn't included within that.
So is that just because they haven't worked with us even though we've asked? Or?
It would be unethical for me to speak on their behalf in terms of what is included within their contracts. We'll have to ask them.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I get it.
Can I just add to that? Is that okay? So generally, any contract will have some ability to change it within reason and within the legislation that prescribes how you procure something. It's just the level of that flexibility that we wouldn't know at this time.
I think I have raised this point before, that we could actually, in that configuration, we could see a 2-tier level of standard of highways delivery if we were Southend, Rochford and Castle Point, if there's no flexibility in their contract. But I'll take your point.
I think in practice, I think it would be sorted.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, that is the agenda item number 6 drawing to a close. We've said what we were going to do. Thank you to those that have submitted questions. Thank you very much for you and your team, Tom, for answering them. You've come here to answer any questions that have arisen. The questions have arisen and you've answered those. So I'd like to note the answers and note the points. Is there a proposition for that?
I'd certainly propose, I'd say thank you very much for your very clear answers, and I would propose that we note the presentation and the answering of the questions, and that we note that in our opinion the requirement to scrutinise the procurement has been met.
Okay, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Do you need, sorry, Tom, and David and Tom, was there anything you wanted to finish with?
No, just to say once again, thank you very much indeed for this morning. If I might, just as a small aside, Tom Blackburn-Mays is actually leaving the authority today after nearly 2 years as Director of Highways, and in recent weeks and months working on the Future Highways programme. So Tom has been a regular fixture of this committee over the last 2 years. If I could just use this as an opportunity to publicly record all his thanks for all his tremendous work with us at a difficult time at Essex County Council, not just in the business as usual job, the interim director's job, but also through this process as well. So he's made a tremendous contribution. We wish him very well. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Good luck.
Good luck.
Where are you going?
To be determined.
I'm just impressed you had the opportunity.
Confidential.
I'm impressed that you had the opportunity to say anything you liked.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If you're going to change people, we move on to agenda item number 6.
Lovely. Thank you. We'll take our leave then. Thank you very much indeed.
Somebody wants a little break? Okay. Oh, you're going, yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I was already aware of that, sorry. We're just changing.
Yeah, have a good Christmas. Yeah.
Back, Mike. Mike's got a function to go to somewhere else, so I was aware that he was going at 12 o'clock, so I'm pleased we got that finished at 12. We now move on to item number 6. There is no presentation as such, but the committee is now asked to consider the responses to the queries that were raised at the October meeting on local highways panels and any related issues. The committee at that time agreed to formally request that answers be received on these points, and this did not happen. Then officers will be summoned to attend the December meeting. Well, the process happened. The answers were received. As I understand it, there are some ongoing discussions. I think notably with Councillor Gadd and Councillor Blackwell, I believe. There are some actions still ahead. So we've got the responses. Is there any question that hasn't been answered? You may not have liked the answer, but is there any question that hasn't been answered or requires an explanation? And definitely, Councillor Blackwell, Councillor Gadd have got ongoing matters which are being dealt with direct, I understand.
The one referred to in here for me has already been dealt with, so yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. So is there anything to add or question on those questions? Page 210, 211, 212, 213 and 214. Councillor Newport.
Hey, Chairman. On the I'm on the right page here about the speed surveys.
Give us a page number.
Mine hasn't got.
At the bottom.
Which question is? Oh, there's a number there.
There's no numbers on mine. It says page number 2, concerns about speed surveys not being funded.
Yes, that's page, for those chasing it the other way, that's 211.
Okay, so there is a question around this, because we were told speed surveys were not allowed to be put in anymore because there was no funding. Hence, we don't have a list on our LHP of outstanding speed surveys. So this kind of is pointless, to be honest, because we don't have an existing list, because everything was just cancelled as far as we were concerned. So how is this relevant to the Rochford LHP? You know, if we're going to use an example, what are we supposed to do? What's the process of speed surveys?
I'm not familiar what the Rochford issue is.
Because there's no existing, this says about existing speed survey requests would be looked at by officers, but there is no existing list in Rochford, because we were
I see.
there is no funding for it, so we haven't put in any.
Right.
So that's why I don't understand why there's a existing list. And
there is an existing list in some LHPs.
There's none for us.
But there's none for you. Yeah.
No, but even though we wanted to put some forward, we were told.
No, you're saying you've been held back because you didn't think it was, and you held back, and therefore you're disadvantaged.
Yeah.
I can only talk about, Dan will help me out here. We had a list. I think a year ago we started to work backwards, and the philosophy at the time, which wasn't easy to take on, was that because we were starting this process, we wouldn't introduce anything new in any form, including highways panels. And so we shut the door, but then left the door open to finish anything that was already on the list. And I've had 2 speed and volume surveys requested by parishes, and both have been paid for by the parish. And by sheer coincidence, and it won't surprise you, the end result of the speed and volume survey was absolutely nothing like the 100 mile an hour, 24 hours a day racetrack thing. So I think everybody else will now be in the same position. We've had all our surveys done in tendering.
No, I don't think everybody is in the same position. I think Councillor Lissymore's trying to say that she does have some on the list.
Yeah, that's. I think this is where this has come from. I chair the Colchester panel, and we did have some existing, some that have been on the list for 2 years, and it seemed, my argument at the time was, it seemed very unfair to have speed surveys on the list for at least 2 years, and then it be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in the future when possibly, we will get those speed surveys done. And it seemed very unfair. We have been informed that those speed surveys have now been funded now. There was an issue between what was revenue funding and capital funding. We had some capital funding that we could have used, but we needed revenue funding. And it had annoyed me for a very long time, I will say, because it was a relatively small amount of money, about £11,500. And we just needed really to clear those speed surveys that have been on the list for such a long time. That has now been sorted, and I'm grateful to Councillor Cunningham for that. However, we are still waiting for some clarification after the announcement that Councillor Cunningham made at full council that there will be some existing, there will be some processes put in place to ensure that we can still do speed surveys and the likes for the next 2 years, where the officers particularly are still waiting for clarification from Councillor Cunningham's officers on what that funding is going to be and what is exactly going to be covered. But we do understand from Councillor Cunningham that there will be some funding for let's say easy jobs, within the next 2 years, but we're still waiting for clarification.
Anybody got anything to add from their own local highways panel?
I will add that the answer does seem clear, although I can understand why James won't like the answer. The answer is clear, that it's to clear the backlog. Yeah. That's what he says. So he's drawn the line, hasn't he? But you could ask the supplementary question, if any other LHVs have compelling surveys they need to do, could they submit them? You could ask a submit, but he is very clear in his answer. It is only the existing backlog.
I think the point I was trying to make is that our LHP, when we were told no more funding.
I know you've been the good boys and you've not put any more in, and you've been punished for it. That's a fair comment.
I think if you want to make the point, I don't think it's the point to come through this committee. I think you've got to get hold of your buddy. And you've got to say, right, we're going to make exactly as Sue will have done the obvious job of saying, look, these have been outstanding.
Just to go back to the chair of our LHP.
I can't see any other.
Well, this is a cabinet decision to only fund outstanding backlog on the system. If you're querying that, you can only query that with a cabinet member, can't you?
I'll ask our chair of the LHP to, because I didn't have that list.
I actually tell all my parish council, you can pay for one yourself, and it's a real pushback. It's a good pushback, and they do them. And as you say, Alan, they never meet perception. They're always much lower than perception.
Dave, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Chairman. I did get a response from Councillor Cunningham about my request. And it seems quite strange that in the last 8 years, 7 cars have come off the bend at Doverville, Clement Avenue Junction, and ended up in the front garden of the same property. But Essex Highways have got no recollection of any accidents at all on that road, which is quite strange, even though the lamp post outside the house, street light, was knocked down as well, which has never been replaced.
Are we drifting into a local issue here?
Well, because you asked me, did I get an update on the what they asked at the last meeting?
Yeah.
And I'm just giving you the update I got.
Which was that no accidents?
There was no action.
They look at personal injury.
Okay, well, I think...
I was going to just say, I asked one of the questions. I just want to say it was like drawing teeth to get an answer, but we have got an answer. Although the answer is, we'll give you an answer later on. But I have to... It has been a painful process, and we do need to keep an eye on it. If we ask questions, we want them following up.
Okay. So the item is specifically about noting. Anybody got that? Just like to note that?
I was just going to say that where one of the answers is that there was a promised meeting between me and the officers. I mean, I did have a meeting. It was useful from a personal perspective in terms of trying to understand a few things in advance for Section 106, but it didn't really address any of the issues about past poor performance. I think I said to you, I'm sort of slightly losing the will to live, and I think highways are never going to answer the questions properly.
So I'm going to note that. We're going to note what it is and move forward, yes?
Can I just ask, Justin, do you, when questions come up in the meeting, do you keep a record of them? Do you publish them? Do you chase them?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a clear list. If like out of this meeting, you will have a clear list of any questions.
And there is a process, and generally it does work okay most of the time. But obviously there are situations where, for various reasons, information answers are not supplied, but they will also be checked.
You've got that on the list that you know you've not been answered. Okay.
But just on that, it's generally unsatisfactory in the sense that, like, the separate answers to questions which Justin sent round at whatever it was 5 o'clock last night, you obviously only just got those, having had to chase them again.
Yeah.
And so there does seem to be a process that, highways come along, they're asked questions, they don't answer them, Justin chases them, and eventually we get the answers 12 hours before, 24 hours before the meeting. It doesn't really give us as a committee proper time to look at them, interrogate them, discuss them. And clearly some are still outstanding from last time, like the performance indicators.
Yeah, but the committee, as a reference to the last meeting, you do have to summon officers, the cabinet member, to attend if you're not happy with responses or if there's a particular issue.
Yeah, all I'm saying it's not, from the committee's point of view, it's not very satisfactory that you ask questions and you don't get the answers till the eve of the next meeting.
Correct.
It doesn't.
Only if Justin pushes.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't go for efficient working of this committee. So us to have then to keep chasing and I absolutely sympathise with you because I've seen the number of times you've had to chase them.
That's no reflection, I can assure you, on the effort that Justin puts in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so move on to item 7, work programme. Justin, we're asked to note the current work programme on pages 217, spot 219. Anybody got anything they would like to add to the work programme? Again, bearing in mind that you're adding something to a body that may no longer exist at some stage, at some time in some part of the future. So Councillor Newport.
Yeah, I did speak to Justin about this and proposing that we looked at SEP and NEP in the future, on the future work programme. Because I think residents are quite, particularly, I don't know what NEP's like, but SEP, a lot of residents have a lot of complaints about the service.
The only complaints we get about the NEP is they're too efficient.
Oh, really?
Well, I think the ideal of a good day at the NEP is 400 miles of red paint, and then next day send the vehicle out taking pictures of all the cars on it. I think I'm right. I think Dan, you sit on that. Net are making more money. They know what to do with, don't they?
Well, they can need to throw a bit to SEP.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so are we happy to take that?
Okay. Still live.
Of course. Yes. Who was the second person? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's just possibly what we talked about earlier in the meeting, that possibly for January we need the speed management.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it's on the list as speed management strategy, but it's TBC. I think we ought to try and put a date on it, didn't we? Okay. Because when did she say it was going to be draft?
Well, she said January.
Did you say January?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we don't particularly want to hold it up, given it's, your point that it's taken forever already to get to this stage. But it would be good. It seems it'd be good, therefore, to scrutinise it in January, either just before or just after it goes out.
Try not January to the date, didn't we?
And the committee wanted to scrutinise it before it went to public consultation.
We did say that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but if that means delaying the public consultation yet again, I'd be happy for it to go out, to be started, and on the basis we'll scrutinise it while it started, if that's...
I mean, it's not the final version either, is it? The prior to public consultation is not the final version because
It's just harder to change, isn't it?
Okay, so work programme, add that, I think that's a good one. I think that's a good point. Date of next meeting is scheduled to take place on Thursday, 22nd of January 2026, 10 a.m. here in the committee room. With nothing else outstanding, can I thank you for your help in getting us over the electric troubles we're having. An opportunity to say to everybody, it's been an interesting year on this committee. Been some pluses and some minuses and some grey areas and some black and white areas, but the person, if there was a person of the year, so it'd be Justin, who behind the scenes does a fantastic job. And to be blunt, we will miss him when he leaves us. He'll be here for the next meeting. You'll have the opportunity to say something there, and you can walk out the door, can't you?
Yeah.
You can really, with or without microphone?
Maybe without.
We need a number of people leaving us as one of the work items, don't we? Number of officers leaving.
So, from me, thank you for good timing today. Well done, everybody. Good questions, good answers. I think the answers we wanted. Have a happy Christmas. Have a